I was up in your neck of the woods.
That's right. That's right. How's your friend's family and
They are very strong, stoic people, but this is quite a blow.
okay.
It's quite a blow.
Yeah,
But
understood.
she finished the construction of Greater Allen AME, the cathedral.
Ah,
Her father was the biggest black architect in the Northeast, but he was killed
wow.
piloting his own plane in '94. And
Wow.
she was about 26, and she had to take over the firm. She was a banker,
Mm.
and so she finished the project. It was like 60% done or so, but she had to finish it. And so that's why. And Pastor Flake, his wife has taken over the church. She
Right.
preached the eulogy. It was, very moving.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes, yes.
Very moving, but quite a blow. This was not something anyone expected at all.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
that is life. One thing I do know, my girl was done. When I saw her, I said, she has left the building. You know,
Oh,
I was very
yeah.
clear. I said, no, she's gone. And,
Right.
um, and not only is she gone, she spent the last portion of her life. She was always very, very, very aligned with God. She became an ordained
Mhm.
minister. Um,
Wow.
that's where she was. And so, that gave me a lot of comfort that this is the path that she was on. And she got her reward. She got the
Yeah.
upgrade, right?
Yes,
She got the
yes,
upgrade.
yes.
So God bless her. You know, will
God,
I and
God
everyone
bless
there?
you.
Oh, yeah. I mean, a lot of us will miss her just profoundly. I do every day. But she's gone
Sure.
on to do some other business. I am never
Mhm.
going to question God, ever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That
Mm.
I'm not going to do. So, hey,
Yeah.
Linda and Andre and Brian and Will and Joyce. Hey, 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 hey. Oh, Joyce, you're so sweet to me. Thank you so much. We are going to be talking about President Biden and the mandates and what all of this, the vaccine mandates, they are coming. Everybody, what does that mean? There was an
Mhm.
NFL quarterback who he got coached by the league. He said they can make your life very, very difficult. I don't want to have people take these shots under duress. I don't think that's a good idea. You don't want people to feel that our government is all over our backs. I just There's
Mhm.
something about that, particularly when you know how Europeans came to the United States escaping government oppression. Black people have another relationship with government, except in the civil rights movement, of course. The government to intervene to ensure and assure our freedom. So, but I think somewhere in between our experiences, we can come up with, the great American experiment. But there's a lot going on, a lot, a lot, a lot. But we want to talk about the antibody treatments. What if you get COVID? What next? What do you do? Do you go home and just
30.
and just wait until it's over? No, there are treatments, but you don't have access to them. That's something we're going to talk about today. Stay right there, everybody. Coming up on the Santita Jackson Show. Like and share, everybody. Like and share. Hey, Carissa from Minnesota. Excited about Miss Lee, the champion? What? Bless her heart.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. I cannot believe it. It's July 30th, Friday, 2021. The Santita Jackson Show coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio. The voice of progressive Minnesota, sending much love to the people of St. Paul in particular today. Suni Lee, a native of St. Paul, Boy, she's had a story to tell. She lost her uncle and aunt to COVID. Her father had an accident, catastrophic, really, but he's still with us. So it's, I guess, it's one of those life changing events, really. Um, Paralysis, and that reshaped their family. But now she is a gold medal winner, having overcome her own personal injuries. And so it was wonderful to see her get her win yesterday. And Andrade, she's the first South American to medal in gymnastics in the Olympics. I was very, very excited to see that young lady in particular, African, uh, a black person from Brazil, and indeed, one of the South American gymnasts did a Black Lives Matter fist to the sky salute at the end of her routine. Wow, things are just rocking and rolling at the Olympics, everybody. So I want you to call me or text me 773 WCPT. 773-763-9278. Are you watching the Olympics? I have to tell you, since Simone Biles isn't in it, I'm waiting for track and field. And even with Sha'Carri, I'm like, they kind of lost my interest, really. And I'm happy for her. I'm excited about her story, but heaven knows I wanted to see Simone. And I'm hoping that she can get over the twisties, but she says it generally lasts about 2 weeks. So maybe we'll be able to see her when they do their exhibition tour after when the Olympic team tours after the Olympics. In the meantime, wow, the medal count: China 38, Japan 27, the United States 41. Oh, absolutely. The Russians 33, Australia 22, and on and on and on it goes. Everybody, what do you think about the Olympics? What do you think about President Biden and requirements, mandates? Really, that's what they're coming down to. I want to hear what you think. Call me, text me, 773-773-9278, 773-763 WCPT. According to CNN, the Delta coronavirus variant appears to cause more severe illness and spread as quickly and as easily. Vaccinated people might spread it at the same rate as unvaccinated people. Wow, what is the deal? We'll be talking with, our panel about that in just a few minutes, because we need to know, what does this mean? Does this mean that the vaccines wear off quicker? Were they as efficacious in the first place? We need to know. We need to know so that we can protect ourselves, everybody. Remember, according to this report, vaccines don't prevent all infections, and people can be asymptomatic carriers of the disease. Just wish they had pushed that before everybody started taking off their masks. An executive order directing Texas state troopers to stop any vehicle if there is, quote, reasonable suspicion that it is being used to transport migrants released from the custody of U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Abbott says it is a public health measure and has repeatedly tried to link a rise in COVID-19 cases in the state to border crossings. What do you think about that, everybody? Is it because of border crossings, or is it because down there they don't wear masks? How about that? The Biden administration wants states and cities to pay people $100 to get vaccinated. Was that enough do you think that will get about half the country? That's right. About half the country is not fully vaccinated. So what do you think? Will that move people? Natalie, I want to hear from you today, because you gave us a lot of interesting feedback yesterday. They're calling on states, territories, and local governments to pay $100 to Americans who remain unvaccinated against the coronavirus to get their shots. The move comes as concern has grown about rising cases across the country, according to the New York Times. He has announced measures that include a requirement for federal employees, or federal employees will have to be, if they're not vaccinated, they will then have to go get test. I'm wondering if they're going to have to end up paying for the test, because if they disincentivize your test taking financially, many people are going to go on and get the shots. What do you think about that? As President Biden is moving to require vaccinations of federal workers, well, guess what? He is ordering the military to move toward mandatory COVID vaccines. Now, if you recall, early reports this year showed that many people in the military were pushing back against these vaccines. What will that mean? How will that impact troop morale if they are forced to get vaccines. Can they do that? Well, NFL quarterback, Buffalo Bills, Cole Beasley, uh, still refusing the jab, but others like Tennessee Titans quarterback Ryan Tannehill acknowledged he gave into league pressure to get vaccinated. Quote, he said, I'm currently in the process right now of being vaccinated. The NFL has kind of made it clear what they want to happen. If you don't fall in line, they're going to make your life miserable with all protocols. He said, I wouldn't have gotten the vaccine without the protocols that they're enforcing on us. I think it's a personal decision for everyone. Everyone has to make the best decision for them and their families. That's kind of our mindset in this building. They're going to try to force your hand. And they ultimately have forced a lot of hands by the protocols. What do you think about that, everybody? How do you think people are going to feel if they've been forced to do something that they really, really don't want to do for a whole lot of reasons? Wow. And according to NBC News, vaccine mandates are more likely to occur once the FDA grants full approvals, according to health experts. That's right. The U.S. could see a wave of COVID-19 vaccine mandates as soon as the Food and Drug Administration grants full approval to one or more of the shots, according to public health experts. And one of these companies is in line to make $33 billion from these vaccines alone this year. Wow. But the Washington Post wrote a very interesting story. They published it about a week ago. Vaccine hesitancy is becoming vaccine hostility as opposition to shots harden. What do you think about that? How do you think this is all going to play out, everybody? What do you think? In the meantime, scientists are asking to see the data behind the new policy from the CDC. New recommendations from federal health officials this week on when vaccinated Americans should don face masks came with a startling bolt of news. People who had had their shots and become infected with the Delta variant can harbor huge amounts of virus, just like unvaccinated people. And so now scientists want to know, where is the data? Because the agency merely cited, quote, CDC COVID-19 response team unpublished data from 2021. Well, now scientists are saying, show me the data. What do you think about that, everybody? Call me, text me, 773-763-WCPT, 773-763-9278. What do you think about this? Where are we going with all this? There's a whole lot. Poverty is a policy choice, according to a study that says that COVID aid will cut U.S. poverty nearly in half, everybody. That's from the Urban Institute. They are saying, they have cited as they've gone over the numbers, that this COVID aid will cut U.S. poverty nearly in half. What do you think about that? In the meantime, 73 major corporations, according to Common Dreams, pay just 5.3%, a 5.3% federal tax rate between 2018 and 2020. President Biden has asked Congress to act to prevent evictions just 3 days before this moratorium expires. Wow. You know, only $3 billion of a more than $40 billion pot of eviction relief has been used. Do you need eviction relief? Call your congressman today. Call them today and find out where you can get some relief. You don't need to get thrown out of your home. All right? 228 Republicans are blasted for briefs, urging the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade. Wow, wow, wow. What a time to be alive. Pastor Tisha Williams, talk to me. I need some good news because, boy, I'm trying to keep my head above water, as they said in good times. The First Baptist Church pastor.
Good morning, Santita. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, as always, for having me on. It seems to be a lot. It almost seems to be like we're at war, right? But today I want to talk a little bit about that. I want to talk from the subject armed, but not that dangerous. Armed, but not that dangerous. In the book of Isaiah, we find 54, we find these words beginning at the 16th verse. Behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals in the fire, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work. I have created the waster to destroy. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, and every tongue that shall rise against thee in judgment thou shalt condemn. So what is a weapon? A weapon is a tool used for the purpose of causing harm or damage to a person. And from a broader perspective, weapons include anything used to gain an advantage over an adversary or place them at a disadvantage. And the one who possesses or carries a weapon is said to be armed. In this passage, Isaiah is delivering a word of hope for the future of Judah. Couldn't we all use a word of hope right now? Oh. He's telling them that although they've encountered their share of enemies, they are still precious in God's sight. And while they may have taken their share of bumps and bruises, trying to keep their head above water, God is with them as a father, a redeemer, and a protector. And with this, he promises that no weapon that is formed against them shall prosper. You too today may have a similar story to that of Judah. You may have taken your bumps along the way. You may be in the fight of your life right now. But God, through it all, promised that no weapon formed against you shall prosper. In other words, your enemies might be armed, but they're not that dangerous. That's the good news. This verse is one of the most quoted in the entire Bible, and we use it freely and we use it often. We speak it over ourselves. We speak it over our families. We speak it over our situations. And whenever we find ourselves under attack, we're quick to quote this verse. However, have you ever considered why the weapon will not prosper? Let me refer you to verse 16. Somebody say it's all in the forming. In verse 16, God says, it is I, and understand that he means the great I am, who created the blacksmith, who fans the coal into flame and forges a weapon fit for its work. It is I who have created the destroyer to work havoc. In other words, God is saying the reason the weapon won't prosper is because I formed everything and everyone that forms the weapon. That's exciting. When we talk about this word from the Hebrew context, it means to create. And in this context, it's the same as in the creation. And according to the book of Genesis, God creates. When God forms, everything falls in line with God's will. I'm talking about the God who created order out of chaos, who shaped a formless and empty earth, who formed man from the dust of the ground, who knew you before you were formed in your mother's womb. So if God is in control of all of that, then how much more can God control the blacksmith? How much more can God control the would-be destroyer? This is the reason the weapon won't prosper, because God is in control the whole time. Also, in this context, the word has another meaning, yatsar. It also means to preordain or to plan of divine purpose or of a situation. Here we find that we don't have to go all the way to Romans 8:28 to learn that all things work together for good. The weapon may not come from God, but it can be used for God's glory. Like Joseph said to his brothers, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done. Oh, somebody say, hit me with your best shot. God today has your back, and God has always had your back. You know, the weapons will never stop forming. You will always have enemies and haters, but I want you to know that God is not all about defense. God also believes in offense. So know this. The enemy may have weapons, but you've got weapons too. Not only do you have weapons, you've got a whole arsenal in the form of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. I'm reminded of when President George Bush was in office. He spent more than half his tenure fixated on U.S. enemies, Saddam Hussein, and weapons of mass destruction. You remember that, right, Sister Santita? Mm-hmm. Also known as WMDs. And in an effort to finish the fight the senior Bush started, he built a whole platform around finding WMDs. His reason for going to war was to find WMDs. When his approval ratings began to slip, he refocused our attention to the WMDs. When his leadership was put to the test and attacks came from everywhere, Bush concentrated all his energy and resources on finding the WMDs. And while some may have questioned his politics, we could take a lesson from President George W. Bush today, because we too have a WMD who is ever-present and helps in the time of battle. And his name is Jesus. So when war rises against you, seek your WMD. When people question your judgment, find your WMD. When your approval ratings begin to drop, you have a WMD. When you're put to the test and the attacks start coming from everywhere, concentrate your enemy on your WMD. But here's what we know. He is your WMD. Jesus is your WMD, but he's not a weapon of mass destruction. He's a weapon of mass deliverance, stepping in at the nick of time, a weapon of mass dependence, supplying your every need, a weapon of mass distribution. What he's done for others, he'll do for you. A weapon of mass discipleship. Come unto me. A weapon of mass do-overs. If any man be in Christ, all things are passed away and all things become new. He's a weapon of mass deliciousness. Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. And he's a weapon of mass delight. Delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. We have a WMD. So my brothers and sisters, in this life, there'll be more weapons formed against you that you can count. But remember, you have the ultimate weapon. They might be armed, but they're not that dangerous. And that's the good news.
Amen. I love it. What do you think about that this morning, everybody? Was that great deliverance? I don't care what your spiritual or religious commitment is. I hope that you were lifted by that today because we are all fighting some battle, or we're on our way to fighting a battle, or we've just come out of fighting a battle. That's what my pastor, Reverend Clay Evans, used to tell us. In life, you're in a storm, on your way out of a storm, on your way into a storm. You're going in, you're in the middle, you're coming out. That's the way life is. Whew. Pastor, thank you so much for that today. Stay right here because we have got these two brilliant doctors on with us. We've got Dr. Deborah Holden, who's on the brink, on the brink. And Michigan State, every day she gets closer. She's so ready. And then, of course, we've got Dr. Shanita Knight on with us today, registered nurse, infection preventionist from Case Western Reserve University. We've been talking, everyone at the center of this conversation, quite frankly, have been vaccines. I mean, we're finding out more about the vaccines. And of course we are, because all of this is really new to us. We're still in a clinical trial, technically. We're finding out more and more about the vaccines every day. And we're a little surprised. And so, the president did announce yesterday that he wants cities and states and territories to pay people $100 to get vaccinated because the CDC found that in their studies that vaccinated and unvaccinated people can carry the same viral load. What does that mean, Dr. Deborah Holden? Should they have followed your advice and stayed masked up? Should they have followed your advice and stayed closed just a little bit longer? Dr. Deborah Holden, what did you make of the president's announcement yesterday? I got about 3 minutes before we go to break.
Well, not only should they have followed that advice, they should follow the advice I'm going to give them and stop trying to bribe people to get the vaccine. Because that don't work either. That don't work. Ain't going to do it. That don't work. We have the data on it. It hasn't worked. Ohio dangled that big old carrot out in front of people. They got a slight increase in vaccinations. It was very short-lived. Their numbers don't look any better than anybody else's. Then our governor in Michigan, who I actually think is a smart lady, said, whatever Ohio can do, we can do better. And what did they do in Michigan? They gave away $1 million in the first week. They gave away $50,000 a day to any newly vaccinated person. So you get vaccinated between July 1 and August 3rd, you are eligible every single day after the day you get your first dose to win $50,000. And at the snail's pace that we are getting new shots in arms newly, the chances of winning that money is really, really good, right? We vaccinate on, I think, our worst day. I think we're 1,200. On a good day now, we do about 4,500. So you get vaccinated, and not everybody signs up. Maybe 800-900 people. You got like a 1 in 800 chance of winning $50,000. That's pretty good odds when you compare it to a big lottery. And guess what? It has made almost no difference in vaccination rates. The problem is none of this is being led by science. None of it is being led by data. It is all being driven by politics and by emotion. I will even give people, let's just pretend for a second that everybody is well-meaning. If you were on an airplane and the pilots dropped dead, and the stewardess comes out and says, both the pilots have dropped dead, which among you will fly this plane? Do you want the guy who had some pilot's lessons a few years ago and sort of knows what the controls are and all that? Or do you want some well-meaning zealot who just wants to save the day? I'll take the guy with a little bit of experience flying a plane any day of the week. Well-meaning ain't going to cut it here. And that's what we sort of, to me, look towards. The fact that people think you can do public health because it's just some extension of your common sense, when people like me have spent our entire careers studying public health, understanding how to mitigate pandemics and outbreaks, and people like Dr. Knighton who studied how to prevent the person-to-person spread of infection and the spread of infection in settings. The fact that we aren't leading, the fact that we aren't at the table, it tells you, this is being run by maybe well-meaning people who just don't know what they're doing. So to me, this is just more of the same.
Well, when we get back on the other side, I want us to talk about it. We want to bring in Dr. Santita Knighton, and we want to find out from both of you, because we see Pfizer is forecasted to make $33.5 billion in COVID-19 vaccine sales. So somebody's at the table. They're at the table. But Dr. Deborah Verholden, who's been giving you credible information on this show now for a year, she's not at the table. Dr. Santita Knighton, who knows her specialty is preventing infection, she's not at the table. Who's at the table? What's going on here? And what do you think about the call for states and territories to pay people $100 to get vaxxed? What do you think about that? What do you think about what do you think about the news that the vaccinated and the unvaccinated can carry the same viral load? What do you think about that? What do you think about the masks? Uh, don't you just want to hear some honest talk? I think that would convince. I think people would feel much better about that if that happened. 15. I really, really do. So let's talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show. And who's going to pay if you're not vaccinated as a federal worker? Are you going to have to pay for that COVID test?
5.
Let's talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show. Back in just a minute. Hello, ladies.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Honey, you sound like you got your punching gloves on today. Oh.
Oh, I saw this stuff. Mind you, I had grant reviews all day yesterday. I had them all day today for the NIH. And so and literally I wasn't done until 6. So when I saw this, I said, these people are just
doing the most.
Unbelievable. Like you doing all of this. It's like, please just let the experts lead. There's nothing else. My daughter's having a baby. I'm not going to go into the hospital and say, give me your best orthopedic. No, I want the best OBGYN. I want the best OBGYN to deliver her baby. Like, we use experts for everything. You wouldn't take your car to the flower shop and ask them to fix it. You're going to take it to your mechanic. We have experts who deal with, have built themselves up as experts in all of the things that we're dealing with. And they're not at the table. Even the sister that's running the task force is her thing, and she ain't that senior. It's healthcare disparities. Healthcare disparities. And I'm not dogging her. But, we're the experts.
I agree. And not even just that, it's disturbing. I'm actually writing a piece right now for the New York Times, and it's specifically saying how the lack of team science is not helping to mitigate the pandemic. Because the issue is just to your point, they don't have experts at the table. When you have one person or decision being driven by a team that's not, being impacted by every aspect of healthcare. Meaning, I understand you got the infectious disease doctor at the table, but he don't know about infection prevention. Where's the public health specialist at? Where are the epidemiologists at? So we're missing all the nurses. We're missing all of these different pieces, and they're only having one spokesperson for major decisions being made, and really not understanding Yeah, they can throw all of this money at the public, but they also have to remember that unfortunately this like the boy that cried wolf. These people been hungry. These people been living in food deserts. These people have been not had access to health care, but you want to dangle a carrot of $50,000, $100 in my face for me to get vaccinated when I don't even have access to hypertension medicine or insulin pen or EpiPen. So it's very upsetting, and it seems to me to be coercion and very unethical in terms of how they're doing things right now. And it is very upsetting.
And it's not working. It's not working.
1 minute.
It's not
working. It's not working.
Well, you know,
I think it's having the opposite effect, to be honest.
well, I think so. Well, when we come back, I want to talk about that because, of course, we're moving into the political and social side of this at the top of the hour, and you are more than welcome to stay and talk about that. But it's all mixed up. The social, the political, uh, the spiritual, all of that is all mixed up. I mean, you've got this quarterback who said, "I've been forced to do this and I don't like it." I said, "That's not good. Y'all don't want people to feel that they're getting their arms twisted into this. This is stay right here, everybody. Everybody like and share and call me at 773-763-9278.
10.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show, coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, and, of course, over here on Facebook, the Santita Jackson and Friends page. We're back up. Yes, that's right. We're back up, and you can also WCPT on their Facebook feed. And please stay right there for the rest of the day because they have Tom Hartman and Stephanie Miller and Joni Esposito and so much great programming here. And the same on Radio family to the north in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Sending much love to Suni Lee's family who won the gold medal last night. Bless her heart. And I'm with you. Paula, thinking about her father falling, trying to help a neighbor, and then becoming paralyzed. Wow, but look at the blessing that came to that family, yesterday. She's lifted up a whole people because many Asian Americans who've been the subject of a lot of hatred, a lot of painful actions over the past year, and quite frankly, in their entire American experience. Hopefully these little boys and little girls are feeling a little bit better today because they have seen someone who looks just like them do something so great. Do something so great. I think all girls feel that way. I think that all people who dream feel that way. God bless Suni Lee and her family today. And God bless you, Simone Biles, because I still want to see her, because I have to tell you, I'm still waiting for Simone. I love her. This girl, she's still the baddest chick in the game. Yes, I said it. WCPT 773-763-9278. As great as everybody else was, I said, I love y'all, but Simone is still the gold standard, the platinum standard. Yes. And, every all people can criticize Simone Biles. It doesn't matter. They can't even do jumping jacks. I hear you. That's what you said. You're right. Doesn't even matter. Doesn't even matter, honey. No weapon formed against her will prosper. Isn't that what Pastor Williams just told us? Doesn't even matter. All they're doing is talking. This girl's, everybody's still trying to catch up with Simone, and it's going to take them a long time. So let's talk about President Biden, who wants states and cities and territories to pay people $100 to get vaccinated. And this is as, people went to Provincetown, Massachusetts. Massachusetts is one of the most vaccinated states in the United States. They had a massive outbreak after the 4th of July weekend amongst the vaccinated, right? Everybody's saying that this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. That's not true. According to one news story, about a fourth of those in Los Angeles who are getting breakthrough viruses, we only get a breakthrough virus when you are vaccinated. So there's a lot going on here, like a fourth of their cases. So we need to know what's happening. And when you get COVID, then what? Then what? I talked to several people this week. Dr. Deborah Verholten, epidemiologist, Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State, and of course, registered nurse and PhD, Dr. Shania Knight from Case Western Reserve University, one of the world's few infection preventionists. I'm looking and I'm just trying to figure, you know what, ladies, I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Now, I mean, Dr. Knighton, when we hear, I mean, people are now, I know they've got it, they are saying, I wonder if the vaccinated are hearing how they're feeling when they hear that they can carry the same viral load as someone who's been unvaccinated. Why? How does that happen? Dr. Knighton? Ooh, is she still there?
She just dropped.
Okay, well, no, let's go on and bring her back up. Dr. Deborah Verholten, how does that happen?
I got to get a little bit more data on this.
Okay.
Because,
Okay.
Go ahead.
No. Okay, no. I mean, okay, you've got to get, because I think we're all getting data every day, and I'm not in your position. I mean, I don't come from Johns Hopkins. I'm not an epidemiologist. What's going on here?
Yes. So I'll be honest. I think the problem is only one. We keep getting siloed stories, or I would say siloed aspects of this pandemic, but we continue to keep forgetting what's happening in regards to things that has simultaneously happened. So when the vaccines were being presented, it was roll back the mask. It was, roll back the test. So people that are now vaccinated don't need to be tested. We even saw from the CDC, we don't need to clean environmental surfaces because COVID doesn't transfer too well. And individuals are like, wait, what? And we even saw from infectious disease specialists that didn't agree with those statements. We've also seen, from even Dr. Kiznithia Corbett, who mentioned that, yes, we are trying to develop vaccines that are going to have a long-lasting effect. The problem is we have to remind ourselves that this all just happened not too long ago, meaning like that the first person died from COVID February 29th of 2020. We're just getting ready to be headed into August of 2021. So it hasn't been a long time since the time frame of which the vaccine was developed and distributed. Since then, this is still the same vaccine that was in a manufacturing plant. So for us to see different strains when we know that the mutation that was in Seattle, Washington is not the mutation that is in the Midwest, is not the mutation that was over in Europe, we knew that it was going to migrate. And I know a lot of people disagree with this, but the same way that we see how we're like, this is going to be a mild flu season or this is going to be a bad flu season, we have to understand that COVID, SARS-CoV-2, coronavirus, some form of it is going to be with us for some time now, meaning that we are at a place where this is going to be endemic. We just have to understand how we are going to get it under control. So when we're looking at the data and some aspects of the stories are saying, these are...
Oh, Dr. Knighton? Oh, my goodness. Did she drop again? Yes. Oh, my goodness. Wow. Dr. Verholten, would you like to pick up?
Yeah, I think where she was going is, and I love it when I hear people using epidemiological terms, endemic, right? Yes. It's now with us. It's now with us. We're going to have to live with this. And so the learning curve has to stay steep. The data collection has to stay steep. The transparency in the sharing of the information, we have to keep that going. For the CDC to stop collecting data on breakthrough cases is wrong.
Why are they doing that?
It's wrong. I don't think you can't stick your head in the sand and the problem go away. Just because you can't see it or you don't have the data doesn't mean that the problem isn't there. Remember, in the previous administration, they said, just stop testing all these people. Well, guess what? COVID cases are only a function of a COVID test. So if you reduce testing, you're going to reduce cases, but not in reality. In reality, you won't actually change the number of cases. You just weaken your ability or weaken the system to be able to detect them, identify it, and get them counted. This is the kind of thing. Knowledge is power. We need to know. And I can tell you, as somebody who got the vaccine, and remember when it first started, personally, I was like, I got to wait and see. I got to wait and see. I need some people that I know to get vaccinated first, and I need to see the data. And literally, Leon McDougall, who's the outgoing president of the National Medical Association, said, go on the FDA website. It's on there. I said, great. And I went and I looked and I read the reports, and I could make sense of it. And I made a decision that was okay for me. But I know a lot of people still, they are not there yet. Trying to create this divide, calling it the disease of the unvaccinated, is wrong. All of these things that are being done are not, there is a science for how you communicate about health. There's science around health literacy. There's science around infection prevention. There's science for all of the things that we're dealing with. But that is not what's leading the conversation.
But you know what, Doctor?
I know a lot of people who got vaccinated are feeling some type of way now.
Well, and also there's science, but there's also feeling. There's human emotion. One of our listeners, Miss Natalie, called in yesterday. She has not gotten the vaccine, and she has done so with a lot of thought. A lot of people are around sick people a lot. COVID, people have all kinds of everything. And she said that. She said, I've been around sick people a lot. She said, but you got to give me more for a whole lot of reasons. She didn't go into her health history with us. We don't know what's going on with her. We don't know who she's living with. Many of us live multi-generationally. There's a lot going on. People are making decisions, and they're not making them foolishly. And I've always felt that having a talking down is never a good thing. Don't assume you're the smartest person in the room. You might be the smartest person about some of your stuff pre-therapy, but I promise you're not the smartest person in the room. The only true genius I know is God. Let that go. Dr. Knight, before we go to the callers, you're back? Yes?
Yes, and I just have one thing to say, too, and this is actually speaking to Natalie's emotion and the fact that you said emotions are evolved. It is so interesting, and I have to remind even to our colleagues, who are saying, well, why won't people just take it? And I'm like, we have to understand that early on, the messaging should have been authentic and it should have been honest. So when we first came across COVID, it should have been, we don't understand this and we don't know what it is. But yes, everyone wash your hands right now. At least do that and continue to do that. But anytime you are shutting down a country and you are telling people, oh, go home and that'll slow the spread. And then the next message is oh, yeah, like everybody wear masks and that'll slow the spread. Then, oh, guess what, guys? The masks really are slowing the spread. So everything's decreasing and we should be back to normal in no time because everybody is wearing masks and we're cleaning environments and we're socially distancing and limiting people in space. And then it's, hey, we got a vaccine now, and if you're not vaccinated, you're going to die. If you're not vaccinated, then you know what? We're not going to be able to stop this pandemic. So what I'm trying to say is like literally, and this is honestly, as an African-American woman who many times have reached a certain goal and was told that, oh, this isn't good enough to sit at the table. And you got to constantly keep striving, and it's like constantly fighting or going towards that moving target. This is how the majority of the country feels right now when we are constantly changing the criteria for what's going to stop the pandemic. So at some point, people are going to stop believing or they're going to start saying, hey, what do you really know when everything is constantly changing and it's controversial without a good explanation? And so unfortunately, the messaging has been very messed up and it's come in a place of even, too, when we saw where at times the World Health Organization's guidelines and the CDC guidelines were not matching. Or the CDC's guidelines may have not matched state or local guidelines. So when we have everybody not on the same page, of course, it gives people a different set of rules to be able to follow. It gives them different beliefs to be able to follow. And so I just remind people, be kind because Everyone has received mixed messaging, and everyone was staying at home with stop the spread of this virus. So when they're continuing to add on layers of things that needs to happen, instead of being honest with individuals, then this is why we continue to have the same issues that we have with distrust.
Let me ask you all this, because this is something as we're looking at more breakthrough cases, people who have been vaccinated, fully vaccinated, and who've been vaccinated for a minute. It's been able to these shots have been able to take effect. They've been able to have a positive impact on immune systems. You're now seeing people are getting COVID, and so okay, once you get it, in the on the news, you're continuing to hear, oh my goodness, people when they get COVID, how can you go see someone when they're in the hospital or when they're sick, and you say, now, do you wish you got the vaccine? I said, you know what, you guys, I just can't not, I can't, I just can't. But we all know President Trump got very, very sick last year. Now it's coming out that he was very, very ill. Yeah, if he has to leave the White House, everybody, he was sick because they can take care of the president and the family and anyone at that White House. They had to get him to Walter Reed, which meant he was very ill, and he was. And you could hear it, and you could see it. You could see it. Everything, remdesivir, what was it, remdesivir, and monoclonal antibody treatments, and on, and that saved his life because he was sick. People who had COVID who are, on Instagram, Dr. Knighton, Dr. Deborah Holden said, ask what an antibody treatment is. And people were like, because I had a lot of people said, well, that's interesting. And this is a protocol. This is a treatment that you should ask for if you find you've got COVID-19. Now, of course, there's certain, you have to be at a certain stage of COVID-19 to get these different treatments. But my point is this. It seems as you argue for vaccine equity, Dr. Wilson, I think we need therapeutic equity as well, because people are not able to get these monoclonal antibody treatments and ivermectin or whatever else is out here. I mean, we're not having that discussion. Or am I mistaken here?
Something though. Let me correct something.
Okay.
The point that you make around therapeutic equity is a great one. You do not wait until monoclonal antibodies are not designed for people who are almost dead. They're designed to give people who are potentially at risk for a poor outcome the best running start to fight it off. So people are should be getting monoclonal antibodies early, not late. It shouldn't be once they're really sick, then they get them. If somebody has to go to the hospital, chances are they are eligible for that treatment right then and there. Whether or not they're getting it, that's something different. And I'd be happy to sort of look and see what I can find as far as what the numbers tell us. And mind you, I know the numbers are not, the numbers are what they are. We can only get the data that's corrected, but I got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
But notion of therapeutic equity is an important one. It is an important one.
No, because we don't even know what to ask for, Dr. Deb. Because many of us, I know in the Black community, when we thought we had COVID last year, because we couldn't get the test. Now I'm keeping it 100 with you, everybody. Black and Latinx people couldn't get the test. They couldn't. They were sent home and they were told to tough it out. It's true. It happened with several of my friends. They were sent home to tough it out. I had one friend who was very connected in the medical community. So she had physicians who came together and said, you know what, I'm gonna dig in. This was last year. I'm gonna dig in. I'm gonna do some reading, and I'm gonna come up with something that's gonna help you. And that helped to save her life. Okay. So I'm trying to find out, if you have COVID, then what? Now what? Dr. Knighton, what are you supposed to do?
And so this is speaking more so from the CDC's recommendations, as well as public health. Actually, I was going to say even Board of Health recommendations. If you get COVID, and let's say you're just saying you have simple symptoms, but you are someone that has, comorbid conditions, and again, I don't have a full list of them, So we're talking about, some sort of lung disorder. Do you have chronic obstructive pulmonary disease? If you have some sort of heart disease, if you have diabetes, if you're obese and you know that you have a diagnosis of COVID, you're already at higher risk for having poor outcomes. It is recommended that you seek treatment within the first 10 days of being diagnosed early on, so that way they can mitigate it from becoming severe. And that would be the perfect time to reach out to your primary care provider if you have one, or even find out from even the county, just someone that is involved in healthcare, how can you get access to that treatment early on, so that way you can prevent those outcomes. I also want to say too, Santita, that the thing is healthcare right now, with the system being overwhelmed, the vaccines are meant to reduce clinically relevant symptoms so it doesn't overwhelm the healthcare system. And so, unfortunately, I am concerned that people understanding the use of therapeutics will be how people look at antibiotics, where every time they think that they get sick, they think they need an antibiotic. And now here it is, we're in an antibiotic crisis because we have so much resistance built up because we've overused antibiotics, okay? And so that could be the same case with the therapeutics, that if everyone says, oh, well, there's therapeutic treatment, so if I get sick from COVID, then I'm just going to go get that. I don't want that to be a deterrent from them getting vaccinated if they choose to get vaccinated, because that's not the best approach, because you still have to assume that the healthcare system is not going to be overwhelmed and able to take care of you. And so you want to prevent the bullet instead of having to treat the wound. And so you want to prevent the gunshot instead of having to treat the wound. So whether you're doing that with lifestyle habits, whether you got some lemon and some ginger and building your immune system and vaccinated or unvaccinated, the goal is to honestly stay ready so you do not have to utilize those treatments.
Jewel wants to know, she said, which vaccine do you recommend to be the one to take at this present time with the Delta threat? Dr. Deborah Holden. Is there one that you would recommend over the other, or is that something you want to look into?
Not entirely, and it's funny because at different points in this pandemic, people have said, which vaccine should I get? And when people ask me that question initially, my answer was whichever one is available. Why? Because you get a student. Then we had the two, Moderna and Pfizer, which are both just mRNA vaccines. As we started to get out of the shortage, I said the one that you can get the soonest. That was my answer.
Okay.
Then when we got the Johnson & Johnson, which is a different type of vaccine technology, and a one shot, I said the one that makes the most sense for you. So I almost sort of say that to people now. It's the one that makes the most sense for you. There are some people who still would prefer to have one shot, but we do know that one shot, if we're looking at the data that we have, seems to be less effective against Delta than the two shots. Who knows how that's going to evolve. If, it might be you get a booster sooner. I don't, that requires a lot more research and a lot more data for us to understand what that means. But the only answer I can give people is the one that you're most comfortable with. Mm-hmm. And I do maintain, and I understand, I respect what people are. And I also am not going to handle people's emotions about the vaccine. It's not for me to handle. And like you say, a lot of people have validly, credibly looked, they've done their own research, they talked to their healthcare provider, they talked to others, and they just come to know. And that's okay. Everybody else, I encourage them to get vaccinated. I am convinced that people would be better off vaccinated, even if they contracted COVID, than unvaccinated. The problem is what it would take to firm up and reassure people of that and have protections in place and the kind of surveillance in place so that we could monitor any adverse effects, so that we could make sure that people are left whole after they get vaccinated. A lot of that stuff is not in place. So, validly, people have said, not me. And I understand that. But I am hoping that our nation's leaders will continue to do the work and stop doing this crazy stuff that has, no rooting in anything other than politics to try to move the needle on this thing.
Well, I think it's rooted in money. I think, Pfizer's going to make $33.5 billion. We paid them with develop these vaccines. They got paid. I mean, they are having a windfall right now. You know what? I'm not anti people making money. But the thing is, while you chasing me down the street to give me a jab, you need to also provide insulin because people are now rationing insulin, which is killing people. And they're taking dog insulin. I've done stories about that before. I mean, come on, everybody. We need a universal single payer system so that everybody has equal access to equal high quality health care. Period. That's it. Full stop. Stop put people in lotto for their health. That's not right.
Yeah.
Don't do that. It just doesn't even taste right. I got 1 minute for you, Dr. and 1 minute for you, Dr. Just 1 minute. I got about 30 seconds.
Not even necessarily, and this is more so not even necessarily a last minute, but more so even a question that we have to think about as well, is that the booster is being discussed, but what we're unaware of is literally if people that took the Moderna vaccine, if Pfizer makes the booster, will people that took the J&J and the Moderna vaccine be able to get the booster? And so there's still a lot of questions that need to be asked that I don't have the answers to, and I'm not sure Dr. Deb has the answers to. So there's a lot of uncertainty that exists as well right now. They were talking about the boosters early on when the vaccines originally came out. And so I also want to remind our listeners that some people are just waiting it out because they knew that a booster was coming, and just even trying to understand, does it make sense for me to get a vaccine if I don't know if a booster will or will not be available for the original one that I took?
Yeah.
And so there's still a lot of unknowns about this, that exist. And so I just want to remind people, again, to be kind, because we really don't know what the reasons are behind why people are waiting.
Because in the middle of this, then we were told you might only need one shot. And Dr. Deb said, wait, I didn't sign up for that. So we got a lot to work out. Let's talk about this, everybody. I want you to call me at 773-763-WCPT on WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio in Minneapolis, St. Paul. I am Santita Jackson. This is the Santita Jackson Show. All right, my lovely ladies, do you all want to stay with us? I know you're driving, Dr. Shanina.
Yeah, it's actually crazy. My girlfriend is driving because we heading back from Columbus. We did this fun aerobic step tour, and so we're headed back home this morning.
I'm mad at you. Yes, I do. Epsom salt is my very best friend. Don't play. You'll get there one day.
I get it. Listen, my feet is on one of those massager things like right now, because when I tell you, it was some work. We put in work this week.
Oh my goodness. Well, I just love you ladies to pieces. Dr. Deb, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Well, don't say it with so much enthusiasm, please. She said, yeah, I'm here. I'm like, really? What's that mean? Making me feel like you don't want to be with us this morning.
You'd understand.
I mean, can you believe you're this close to becoming a grandma? Ooh.
I know.
Hey. I mean, this is so rich. I love it. Oh, this is so rich. I love it. I love it. I love it. Oh, okay. Attorney Fancher, how are you?
Oh, I'm fine. How are you? Good morning.
Great hearing your voice. Great hearing your voice. Great.
Likewise.
You have to run.
I do need to run, and I need to talk to Dr. Knight. If you get a few minutes, let me know. I don't start rent reviews till 10.
Okay, well then you know what? I'm gonna let the both of you go, and I'm gonna call you later on, and I'm gonna call you Dr. Knighton later on. How about that? In the meantime, I gotta run around today. Yes, sending you much love. How are you?
We have Attorney Hoffler.
Thank you. How about you?
I am. Whew, it's been, it's been an up and down month, up and down, up and down. But I'm still here, and God is good. That's all I can tell you, and that's all we need to say.
I'm going to join in that sentiment.
Absolutely, all the time, even if I don't understand. I know God is good. What did my great grandmother used to say? Well, the old folks, these old unlettered people, they put everything just in such profound ways. She said, God is too kind to be cruel and too wise to make a mistake. And she looked me in my eyes and held my hands and told me that as a little girl. Oh my goodness. It's just sorry. Boy, I miss that woman.
We have Attorney Connolly.
I sure do. But she sure did tell me that.
That's powerful.
It is. I mean, and what else do you need to know behind that, right?
Mm-hmm.
What else do you need to know? Attorney Hoffler, how are you?
Good morning. How are you, Santita?
I am doing well. I've had to catch a tear. I hope I don't make my eyelashes peel this morning. Let me you all hear planning. That's because I'm trying to keep the glue, which is holding the eyelash down here. I don't really think this was real, did you? He was like, your eyes are so beautiful. They're so beautiful. I looked at him like, are you nuts? No one grows lashes this long. Certainly, I said, this is not going to work. He sounds like a nut. Oh man, I couldn't wait to laugh with my mother about that the next morning. I said, can you believe this? Does he sound like he's crazy? It just, gosh, it just sounded nuts.
And we have Dwight McKee.
Dwight McKee, how you doing? He sounded crazy.
How you doing? Well, what he was really saying was, you're just so beautiful and you're glow.
Uh-huh.
And he was looking in your eyes, and he just slipped up.
Mm-hmm.
That's what.
Yeah. That's it. Uh-huh.
I'm sorry, Dwight. I didn't mean to.
Oh, let's just say I did find that he was insincere. That's not going to get me. Guys, just know that. I do best with a really, really dear friend. He's got me something I really like. And I guess I'm following my mother's advice. She said, if you don't like him, it's not going to work. Right. She said, at the end of the day, you really need to like him. And so there you go. But I'm so glad you all are with us today because we've got a lot to talk about, the political fallout of where we're going with these vaccines. And were you able to get Aaron?
Yes, good morning.
Hey, Aaron, how you doing? Okay, we've got Attorney Aaron Connolly, Attorney C.K. Hoffler, Attorney Mark Fancher, and Dr. D, also known as Dwight McKee. So everybody, we're going to have a great time today. We'll be up very, very shortly.
Hey, Granny.
Oh, she's already gone, honey.
Oh, she's gone? Okay.
You don't say that to a woman. You just want to get popped. You better just say, hey, gorgeous one. That's what you say. You got to ask permission. What's wrong with
1 minute.
Dwight? Dwight just doesn't make good sense. And bless Jan's heart. She's trying to train him.
Well, the thing is, you can say that virtually because,
That's right. He won't get hit. Oh, my goodness. I love it. Oh, boy.
$30.
Hello.
Oh, we're still here. Oh, yeah, yeah. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
No,
Yeah.
no, no. You know what? You know, here it makes you think that everything is dropped. I say that all the time. I'm sorry. I was reading
Okay.
some of the comments because I want to bring some of them up. And Paula said, CK is up.
To a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Santita Jackson Show, Friday, July 30th, 2021. Can you believe it's almost August? WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. That is my home. And AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. That is my home to the north in Minneapolis, St. Paul. St. Paul, Minnesota is celebrating today because Suni Lee, that's right, the founder of Paul of Minnesota of the United States. She is the gold medalist in the gymnastics all around competition at the Tokyo Olympics. And what a compelling story she has. You know, her father was trying to help a neighbor, fell, became paralyzed, uh, lost an aunt and an uncle to COVID. In a time where Asian Americans are being attacked, she is becoming a symbol to that community, I think, and to all others. And so we just congratulate this young lady for this magnificent accomplishment. I mean, she even broke some bones. She said, I considered giving up during the pandemic. It was just a really, really rough year. I'm so glad she didn't. Let you know what happens when you hold on and hold out. Sending much love to you, Simone Biles, because I still want to see her do her thing. Everybody, what's happening in this medal count? Well, the United States is on top, everybody, thus far. 41 medals for the United States, 38 for China, 27 for Japan, 33 for Russia, 22 for Australia, and on and on and on and on. What a tremendous competition it has been. But I have to tell you, when Simone wasn't in it, I kind of lost interest. I'm still loving Simone, and now I'm waiting for track and field. Even though I miss Shakari. So Chicago high of 72 degrees today. Kind of cool. You can really feel it. Partly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 81 degrees. Mostly cloudy. The Dow closed up 153 points yesterday. The Nasdaq closed up 15 points. The S&P 500 closed up 18 points. The Twins will be playing the Cardinals today. That's right. Even though we have the Olympics, we still have Major League Baseball, everybody. The White Sox shut out by the Kansas City Royals 5-0. And, well, Cincinnati beat our Cubs 7-4. They'll be playing the Nationals today, and the White Sox will be playing Cleveland. Everybody, what's going on with the coronavirus? The Delta coronavirus variant appears to cause more severe illness and spread as easily as chickenpox, according to this report from CNN. Fully vaccinated people might spread it at the same rate as unvaccinated people because they will carry, it is finding from the CDC, they're finding that vaccinated people can carry as much viral load as unvaccinated people, everybody. Remember, they caution vaccines don't prevent all infections. People can be asymptomatic and carriers of the disease, everybody. President Biden wants states and cities to pay people $100 to get vaccinated. The move comes as concern has grown about the rising cases across the country. Are you willing to get paid to get the shot? Indeed, as he moves to vaccinate federal workers, or if you're not vaccinated, you're going to have to take tests. I'm wondering, we're going to have to find out from C.K. Hoffler and from attorney uh, Aaron Connolly and attorney Mark Fancher. Will they have to, will the federal workers have to pay for the test? Because that would be a way to force them into vaccines. Think about that, everybody. And even though we are loath to give federal mandates, President Biden's orders are pushing the military closer and closer to having mandatory vaccinations of people in the military, even though a big chunk of people in the military didn't want these shots. How is that going to work? Well, maybe we should ask some of these professional football players. While some football players, such as Buffalo Bills' Cole Beasley, are still refusing to get the shot, others, like Tennessee Titans quarterback Ryan Tannehill, acknowledged that he gave into league pressure to get vaccinated. He said, I'm currently in the process of being vaccinated. Right now, the NFL has kind of made it clear they want it to happen. If you don't fall in line, if an outbreak occurs among, if you don't fall in line, they're going to make your life miserable with all the protocols, everybody. So he said, I wouldn't have gotten the vaccine without the protocols that they're enforcing on us. What is that going to, how's that going to look, everybody? What do you think? And what is going to happen when the FDA grants full approvals to these vaccines? Will you be able to institute um, vaccine mandates? What about vaccine hesitancy? There's a Washington Post article that I've posted that said vaccine hesitancy is becoming vaccine hostility as opposition to shots hard. And we need to talk about that, everybody. And, we also have to look at the fact that you need to be safe, everybody. I am not an anti vaxxer at all. But what I do not like is to see Americans or people turned against each other, not just in the United States, but all around the world. We have politicized this on the right and the left, and I don't think it's a good thing. It's not a good thing. This is about our health, everybody. This is about our health. It's about our health. And so we need to keep it right there, but that's not what we're doing. So we've got a tremendous panel who are going to talk with us today about, I guess, the political side of this, the political side of President Biden's tremendous speech yesterday, in which he said, federal workers, you're going to have to be vaccinated, or you're going to have to submit to testing twice a week. The military, we're moving toward mandatory vaccines, even though a big chunk of them did not want. They've resisted getting the vaccine. So what do you think about it, everybody? Call me or text me at 773-763-WCPT, 778. Of course, GWC Injury Lawyers gives you the opportunity to call me, to text me at that particular number. So I want to hear your thoughts. So let's get right to it. Okay, Attorney C.K. Hoffler, what did the president call for yesterday? And legally, what does all of this mean?
Well, good morning, Santita, everyone, and all of your listeners. Well, the president yesterday this is a very risky move politically, probably a decent move from a healthcare standpoint, depending upon how you look at it, but very risky politically. What he has said to federal employees, for the most part, including the military, even though there's some distinctions, is that you're going to be required to take the COVID vaccination, a COVID vaccination, soon to be able to work. That's in a nutshell. Bringing people back to work in the office from his analysis, he said, was challenging, and people have to come back to work. And to ensure that we protect everyone, not just yourself, but your workers, you're going to have to get vaccinated. So that's in a nutshell. Of course, there are exceptions. There's always going to be a medical exception. There's always going to be a religious exception. But what he is doing is similar to what big business is doing, which is mandating that people get the vaccination. This is consistent with his strong efforts to ensure that most Americans are vaccinated. Politically, it's a very risky move because there are so many concerns about the vaccinations for many reasons. And I'm not taking a position one way or the other. As I've stated publicly, I chose to get vaccinated, and my children are vaccinated, and my kids are 16 and 18. Many didn't feel that, and as I said, I made my decision that my 16-year-old should be vaccinated. He's asthmatic, and both of my children play a contact football. They play football. And my older son is in college playing football.
At a very high level where they are college recruits. So they're not warming the bench. I mean, I'm not hating on anyone, but these are young men who have a big stake in their football careers because colleges are they're already paying her eldest son to be in one of the top programs in the country. And her other son is also a heavily recruited football player. So I think it's important for us to state that, CK.
Absolutely. And I raise that only because of the NFL concern. So I follow this very closely. I just want to be in full disclosure and so that everybody understands my perspective on a personal level. From a legal standpoint, this is going to be a hot mess because as COVID is evolving and all these different protocols are in place, so is the legal framework for challenging decisions that employers make. Typically, in the world of employment discrimination, if you are treated differently or feel you're treated differently because of being in a protected class by your employer, meaning based on race, gender, disability, that's one of them, cultural heritage, all those different classes, or engaging in protected activity, then that could give rise to a claim of discrimination under Title VII and other federal and, depending upon your state statute. So the EEOC long ago took a position as related to testing and also gives guidance and positions as relates to vaccination. So from a legal standpoint, the president, he can do this anyway, and he can issue presidential orders, and all of these things would minimize the likelihood of successful litigation. But they're not going to kill litigation. We saw how a group of healthcare workers in Texas fought and filed a lawsuit against a Texas hospital. The case was ultimately dismissed, but it didn't stop them from fighting. And these are healthcare workers who presumably have more knowledge, more information about the virus, how it spreads, and have treated people and are in the business of treating people who are dying or are infected from COVID. So legally, this is a quagmire. Legally, it's going to be a mess. I anticipate, just based on the calls that I get in my office, and this is a very small part of my practice area, employment discrimination, that there's going to be a lot of litigation that's going to surface because people feel very strongly that they should not be forced to take a vaccination. Now, in the military, it's going to cause a similar issue. For those who are engaged in, combat, who are like when you're in a situation where you're in tight quarters and when there are a lot of people in a very small space on a regular basis, like if you're on a ship in the Navy, I can see where there would be concern if there were, and that's assuming that people believe that the vaccination is effective. I'm not a doctor, I don't take the position on that. But there's a concern that some people aren't vaccinated because you're in a very, very tight quarters, and that could be concerning. With the NFL, as I said, when there's contact sports, it literally, from a psychological impact, can impact the players who are vaccinated and who are not vaccinated. If you're vaccinated and you feel that players who you're coming in contact with, rolling around, because on a high level, there's a lot of contact, are not vaccinated, there's a certain amount of trepidation there, depending upon what you believe. However, being forced and mandated to do something is never a good move, I believe, politically, because you're going to have a segment that's going to fight back, especially when it comes to the COVID vaccination, especially given some of the trepidation that we know exists because there's not the level of proficiency with the evolution of research, and it's not an exact science. So I see all sides of it, but I think the president is going to be on solid legal footing right now, but there are going to be challenges without a question because people don't like being forced to put something in their body, especially when the research right now is very sketchy on some levels. And there'll always be the medical exceptions. I want to make very clear, medical and religious exceptions, but they've got to be really strong medical and religious exceptions. You can't just say, well, my nose is running and I feel some kind of way. I had little, I thought so. You have to really have a bona fide medical excuse, a letter, much like what you do for FMLA, and you have to be able to fill out what would be, according to the Biden administration, I think a little more than FMLA, but less than disclosing your entire life.
Attorney Mark Fancher, your thoughts?
Well, I think Attorney Hoffler has laid out the legal landscape very well. And, to speak more broadly and more generally, I think that the instinctive reaction of many people is to, bristle and to say, well, my rights are being affected, that I'm an independent individual and I should be able to make my own decisions about what happens to my own body, and how dare the government come in and force me to do these things? How dare my employer come in and force me to do these things? But, we have to bear in mind that this kind of thing happens all of the time. And it's just that we're not always aware of it. We're not focused on it. We make decisions and draw lines and impose requirements and limit people's behavior in so many contexts, in so many ways. It may be that someone who is a pedophile really believes that he can and should do the things that he does, but we limit and restrict what he can do, and we impose penalties for it. because it harms other people. There are so many things that we do which harm other people, and we place limits on it. And so from one perspective, people may say, well, I have a right not to get vaccinated. I have a right not to do this or that. But from another perspective, well, if you don't, then you're harming people. So this creates the kind of dilemma, if you want to use that word, if it's not too strong, that's present all the time when we make decisions about whose rights we're going to protect, who we're going to look to protect. I mean, it happens in other contexts as well. I mean, for example, with respect to the First Amendment, people will say, well, I'm a Klans person, I'm a Nazi, and my First Amendment rights say that I can say anything that I want to say. My speech should not be curtailed or limited by government, and I should be able to say what I want to say. And very often, the courts and government do protect those rights. But when that happens, many times that's from a perspective of someone who, on some level, endorses or buys into the notion of white supremacy because those are the first rights that they're looking to protect versus the rights of the people who are on the receiving end of that hate speech. People who are oppressed, people who are people of color, who also want to be able to say what they want to say and to act and to function in an independent sort of way, but they can't because these people are using hate speech or engaging in racial harassment or doing other things which limit them. So in all of these things, it's not so clear-cut because it all depends upon, is somebody else being harmed? And when you're making that assessment about whether somebody is being harmed, are you making that assessment from one perspective or another? And that perspective can make a difference on whether you perceive harm to be occurring as a result of something that somebody is doing or not doing, or whether you perceive that there is no problem simply because, from your perspective, you don't recognize the victims as being victims.
Aaron Connolly, what do you make of all of this discussion?
Good morning, Santita.
Good morning.
Good morning to your other distinguished panelists who have brought so much to this important conversation. I think the legal analysis is right on. And what I was thinking about listening to this discussion is back to my political philosophy 101 in undergrad, which talks about this tension with utilitarianism, right? When we're looking at what is providing the best good for the most people versus the tension between what is going to personally give you pleasure or make you happy in that moment. And what we see here, I think, is we have to take a step back and look at the time, place, and manner restrictions that our rights have in this country, right? Whether it's free speech, those have time, place, and manner restrictions. You can say certain things and write certain things in certain places, and not others, right? We can't say certain things and have certain signs in polling locations, for example, that we can have 100 feet away. With this, while we're talking about some of these bodily autonomy, the vaccine mandates in many public institutions like universities, other types of employment. For example, students have had to get meningitis vaccines before attending college for years. The staff has to do the same because of the close quarters and potentiality of outbreaks. This is, I believe, no different. And Santita and the panelists have heard me talk about my challenges with autoimmune issues and the issues that come up with children that have those types of diseases as well. So when you're dealing with the chronic illness, you have stress anyway. As a parent of a child with those types of illnesses, this is just the perfect storm of anxiety and fear, right? If your child's under the age allowed to get the vaccine, they're very, very vulnerable. And this is who I think about when we're talking about mandating vaccines and curbing the spread are these innocent lives that don't have a choice. If they were able to get the vaccine, most of these children probably would, and their parents would encourage that. But as it stands with the Delta variant being so contagious, and the concerns about children attending school this fall, I think as we see some of these larger protections being implemented at the federal level,
at some big companies like Google. It will hopefully start a trend that creates just more buy-in from our collective. I'm less concerned about the political fallout because I think for the most part, folks who are supportive of managing this pandemic, who are supportive of their fellow Americans as a whole, as a collective versus their individual town or individual house, I think I hope that trends forward with these type of announcements. And the folks that I think are against them are kind of on the other side politically from the president anyway. So unfortunately, it looks like this Delta variant is going to continue to grow in areas where folks have not been vaccinated. And we see those who previously have come out against vaccines in a hard way coming around and saying, I've either gotten the Delta variant myself, I see what's happening in my community, and people are starting to change their tune. I think the bigger political issue I'm looking at and wondering how leaders in states, for example, like Arizona, who have signed into law that local school districts cannot mandate children wearing masks, those type of legal issues are going to be, I think, very dramatic for folks when they're trying to send their kids back and they're afraid that they're going to catch a deadly virus, and there's no way for the school district to enforce that for kids, right? The kids will have an option to wear masks, but the teachers are literally not able to remind them to do so. So those types of legal issues I'm curious about as we move forward.
It's really interesting because I think that we all see this. It's like a Rorschach test. And Dwight McKee, I can't wait to get your thoughts on the other side of the break, because everybody's bringing another perspective to this. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, Attorney Mark Fancher, Attorney Aaron Connolly, and Dwight McKee, noted social scientist. I want to hear your thoughts. You all are you weighing in over here on the Santita Jackson and Friends page? Whew. There's just a lot of people have a lot of thoughts, and I want to know what you're thinking. And I want to know what you're doing to protect yourself, really, because you're finding that, you can carry the same viral load whether you're vaccinated or not. So, really, the vaccines were designed to protect you from hospitalization. Many of us kind of skipped over that part. We were looking for a magic bullet. That's not what this is. So you still need to wear your mask. You still need to practice good hygiene. More of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Okay, beautiful people. Dwight, coming to you on the other side of the break. Oh, boy. Wow.
Santita, as I try to make the point every time I can, when I drive around Atlanta, I still haven't my protocols from last year in terms of how I'm protecting myself. But the reality of when I look around, I will go into, if I go get, and I started to do a manicure or pedicure, I'm usually the only person with a mask on.
Yeah.
Other than the text. When I drive by a restaurant that has an outdoor cafe, first of all, indoors is packed, and very few people have a mask. I'm sitting there, stuffing food almost under my mask, very uncomfortable. I just decided I'm going to get the food and take it home. But or eat outside, or just eat outside. But and this is just in the Atlanta metropolitan area. And by the way, what I'm observing goes across social, cultural, and economic.
Absolutely.
It's consistent. It has nothing to do with low income, high income, just across the line. And what I think random, just sort of acts of irresponsibility across the board. I don't know who isn't vaccinated. The restaurants don't know who is and who isn't vaccinated. No one knows, because you can get them for free, these little vaccination cards, and fill in the stuff, and it's good. So it's very, very disconcerting. It's very troubling what I'm seeing in terms of the lack of seriousness, lack of responsibility. And I'm not saying I'm any different. I just happen to have one friend and have some people that I knew pretty close that died of COVID. And I'm sure everybody has that kind of COVID story, because it went from 5 degrees of separation to 2 to to right here, somebody who is in your immediate circle. So I think that drastic measures have to be taken, but that's not enough. If people aren't wearing the mask and they're not being compelled to wear the mask, forget about the vaccination, whether you're vaccinated or not. Just the basics of wearing a mask, that is the biggest issue. When it comes to opening back up, we've had robust debates on every organization I'm a part of on whether we should have in-person events. I'm not personally in favor of in-person events. A hybrid approach, perhaps, but in-person events entirely, and for small numbers if we do have it. Why? Because you won't know what your neighbor has done. And an in-person professional events, we do the business of the organization, but then we also go out, we fellowship, we party together, we're hugging, we haven't seen each other for 2 years. There's all of that. And people are of different ages and have different views on even mask wearing in different jurisdictions. Mm-hmm. So you're in an environment that creates vulnerability, not for just some, but for everybody, because we will not know.
1 minute.
Don't have the right to know if you're going to a professional conference what people's vaccination status is. You really don't have the right to know. HIPAA violations, but even if they have to produce a card, as we said, you can get those for free now on the street. So it's a very, very difficult, disconcerting issue, having nothing to do with the legal ramifications.
Oh, yeah.
Because if someone at one of these events or one of these something contracts COVID, and they can prove they didn't have it coming in because they took a COVID test, that's what people do. And if they die, that's where the litigation is going to be significant.
Stay right there.
Against these companies. And it doesn't matter to me that you have signed all these waivers.
15.
I sue companies and hospitals every day where people have signed waivers. Every time you have surgery, you sign a waiver, and yet that doesn't stop people like me from suing hospitals and doctors and getting a result.
5.
So don't get confused about these waivers.
Hold on, stay right there. Yeah.
Change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. We've been talking about President Biden and his announcement yesterday that federal workers, federal contractors will have to be vaccinated. If you work for the federal government and you're not vaccinated, you're going to have to take tests a couple of times a week. The question is, in private industries, they're going to charge some of these workers for the test. And now, mind you, even when you have insurance, the test can cost you $50. That's the copay. Now, that's just the rapid test. Don't get the PCR or the antigen test. That's significantly more expensive. Can you do that? Will it back people into these vaccines? And how would you feel about it? Tennessee Titans quarterback Tannehill is saying, I've been forced into this and I don't like it, but he's got to make a living for his family. How's that all going to work out? We're talking with attorney Mark Fancher, National Conference of Black Lawyers, and attorney Aaron Connolly, one of the nation's leading progressive strategist. Of course, I can't wait to hear. Next week, we're going to talk about Arizona, since my father got arrested outside of Senator Sinema's office. You know, I want to know about that. He's an outgoing president of the National Bar Association, the largest and oldest black bar association in the world. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, chair of Rainbow Push. Our international conference begins on August 1st. You don't want to miss it. And of course, sadly, we're going to kick it off giving a homegoing to April Branch, sending her and her family much, much, much love. Beloved sister who who died last week. And so remember, we go to rainbowpush.org so you can be a part of this virtual conference. Dwight McKee, you've heard everyone weigh in on what President Biden has I think this is going to play out.
Well, the unspoken dimension of this, Santita, is a religious dimension. There are a lot of Christians who believe that this shot is the mark of the beast, particularly at Seventh-day Adventists. And they see it as a extension of Revelation's commandment to not submit to the mark of the beast. And so for them, it's a life and death issue. It's a salvation versus damnation kind of issue. And so they are more than resolute about it. For them, they're willing to die for their conviction. Many of them, rightly or wrongly, see on the right, see this as a not just a First Amendment issue, but a choice between God and the devil. They think that in the vaccine there's a chip that will, in that chip, disbar you from buying or selling. And so when a Biden comes out and say that you can't have a job if you don't get vaccinated, in their minds, this becomes a reinforcement that they are correct in their assessment that this is a church against state issue. The other part of this thing is that as they talk about giving you $100 for a vaccination, the state or these private corporations that's making billions of dollars still has not dealt with the issue of indemnity. Is they want you to get vaccine, but they want no liability. And so that creates a real alarm for a lot of people who really believe that it's all a ruse, that they don't believe that this vaccine is going to work, or the vaccine itself can be harmful, and nobody wants to take responsibility for that. So this has implications that are not just short-range implications, but I see this over time becoming, for some people, a life and death issue. I know personally people who have moved off the grid, who built their own communities because they are afraid that the army will come and force them to become vaccinated. And so they built their own wells, they grow their own food, they entirely live off the grid because they believe that this is a church-state mark of the beast proposition.
So where does this go? I mean, are we now, are we going to be at each other's throats, if you will, literally or figuratively?
Can really go there, depending on how hostile the state becomes and how recalcitrant the religious community becomes. If you think that your very salvation is tied into not taking the vaccine, then you're willing to die for that belief. But you're also on the state side, if you believe that you have the right to protect everybody with that vaccine, you're willing to declare martial law to make it so. And so this can become another quasi-Civil War situation. Seems a little prosperous right now, but no more prosperous than it did when we talked last year about Trump not leaving and would declare his own election, and that there would be election suppression, and that would be the rule of the day. People didn't believe that then. And I say with the same authority, it really can go there if we're not careful.
Well, you were on the show yesterday, CK. It was said that, look, these Republicans have a plan. They plan to take the House and the Senate in 2022. They feel they're on track. They believe that they're on track to do that because they're doing things to make that happen. Not just taking down our voting laws, but they're queuing people up to run for office. And if they are able to overtake just the House, they're planning to install, that is the assertion, President Trump in as Speaker of the House. And that could happen because you don't have to be an elected member of Congress to be Speaker of the House. Anyone can be Speaker of the House, literally anyone. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, what do you think when it comes to liability? Because I'm seeing this in my chat feed. People are concerned about liability. And you just made the point that if someone dies, that's when the rubber's going to meet the road. Why is that? Because, now it's the vaccinated and the unvaccinated who can carry the same virus. You don't need to assign responsibility to, because I think we're a little too old to be blaming people. But how's this all going to work?
Well, I think it does boil down to assigning responsibility and liability. It's not about who's right and wrong. It's just liability. You have to look in terms of the state of the law, state of affairs, whether it's through presidential decree or a law in the books of the states or federal law, some other type of federal law. So in this case, let's say there had to be, or someone took a test on a plane or whatever, and they tested negative and they have their test results. Sometimes you have to bring your test results to different things. Certainly traveling overseas, Santita, we know from our last experience, we had to take a COVID test and it had to be negative for us to travel back to the United States. So suppose somebody has proof that they did not have COVID, they go into a conference that's now not, that is a regular conference. There's a congregation of people and they go to a professional conference or any other conference, and they, upon leaving the conference, they start to develop symptoms, they go to the hospital, it progresses because of their medical disposition. You know, it happens. Some people are progressive and they die, and other people, they just survive, and some people have like a little cough. And suppose it's severe, it's a Delta variant, where we have a lot of unanswered questions, and they die. That family is, and it doesn't matter if they signed a waiver, because there's people saying, well, we signed a waiver, we waived. Yeah. When it comes to death, these waivers have very little efficiency. Very little, because, and as for a living, part of my practice is medical negligence. If a doctor commits malpractice in the course of a surgical procedure or in treatment and all that kind of stuff, and as we know, before surgery, you have to sign a waiver. Those waivers really don't have they're not really a shield of liability.
Really?
Because if there were, there would be no ability to be met mal. Yeah, because when you sue a doctor who you went in for because you had appendicitis to get your appendix out, and then the doctor, they mistake, the charts are mixed up, whatever, and you have open heart surgery, and you signed waivers, of course you're going to have an ability to sue that doctor. And with waivers, no waivers, some waivers. I don't even think waivers ever come up in the court and the context of my medical malpractice cases. It's not really a viable defense that is survived. Otherwise, you never have verdicts, you never have anything. But it's important, of course, to have those waivers. And in different industries, waivers may carry more weight, but when it comes to life and death, it's very different. So all it's going to take is people really, really getting sick, one way or the other, who either were vaccinated or not vaccinated, but in big groups, organizations that are opening up, and for that family to file a wrongful death action. And so that's why I said they're legal quagmires, because and hurdles to get around. But just think of somebody's life when they went in thinking the organization made a representation, only people who are vaccinated or some kind of something. You can never say that. But, you have to have proof of vaccination where we know you can fabricate the card. And they get there and they get sick. And they have proof that going in that they did not have COVID. And you can always challenge the test and everything. That's going to create a legal quagmire. There's going to be litigation surrounding this, just like there was litigation in Texas. It's a very difficult, dicey issue. It really shouldn't be about politics. It should be about healthcare, in my impression, and what we can do to protect ourselves. And I think that it's going to boil down to individual families, groups, doing what's best for their family unit. Because I wouldn't get into the argument, well, it's not, people do resent government stepping in. And I think there is something to be said for that. But there's a health care issue here that nobody wants to see anyone die. No one. No one wants to see anyone be really, because what also people forget is for people who have COVID, when they survive, it's not always over. It's not always over. It can change life as they know it. So these are very, very difficult issues. I think legally it's going to be as much of a volatile ride as the healthcare side of it. And there's going to be a lot of resentment. Do caution, the Republicans are looking at this because we saw statistics with 37% of the people who are not vaccinated are, if we believe the statistic, 37% are white Republican males. 37%, if we believe that statistic.
Well,
now, if that is the case, what is that saying from a political standpoint of a position that they're going to take and how they plan on taking over the House and Senate? They're going to use this as a way to drive a wedge between the American people and the Democrats. It's going to be a political issue, and it really shouldn't be. It should be about health care.
But it is political. I mean, it has become very political. I mean, we've made this a very red-blue issue, Aaron Connolly. And that's not what it is, because quite frankly, if you really, really dig down and talk to people, you have people who are all over the partisan spectrum who are making personal choices about their health, period. And that's just what they're doing. And the media now are driving a narrative that I think, Aaron, is very dangerous. This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. This is a vaccinated versus the unvaccinated. I said, whoa, what are you all doing? This is not smart, particularly as the vaccinated are finding out that they can carry as big a viral load as an unvaccinated person.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, that narrative is not helpful. It's not helpful at all.
Well, the mixed signals, we're in Chicago. We've got Lollapalooza. That's 100,000 people a day, right? Mm-hmm. How do you feel? I mean, you're a lawyer. You're a great, brilliant political organizer, political analyst, and all of that. You also have your health challenges, and you've got a son who's got health challenges. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think, in general, we've been operating in the city of Chicago, I think, really well as a collective, as a member of the city. I see this week has been a little bit different, as Attorney Hoffler was stating I believe in the break, about how many people are actually wearing masks in public, right? It's the idea of we're all kind of in this together seems to be and fragmenting a little bit, as you see in this media narrative, that it's vaccinated versus unvaccinated, and we're learning more about the Delta variant, that it can be carried by folks who are vaccinated, right? So there's a concern that kids going to camp with other kids that aren't vaccinated, because that's the largest population of folks who could be vaccinated that aren't, is those segment of children, because parents are making those decisions for children as well. It's not like kids can go take themselves to the doctor as a 13-year-old and get a vaccine.
Well, if they're in D.C., they can just have it brought to their schools, right?
Right, and that's not true everywhere, especially in some of these more rural communities. I know CPS has done a great job in the city of Chicago of making sure families have access to vaccines. But I think we need to look at situations like Lollapalooza with a sense of reality as well. While they are requiring proof of vaccination and testing, that's 100,000 people per day, and there are ways to get around that system, right? So I'm a little concerned about, the folks that go back to their cities or suburbs or towns after a music festival like that, and are potentially indoors at other venues at after parties, and the impact on our city. But we will not be attending the music festival. I think that's the other decision folks have to make. The time, place, and manner that you're wearing masks, that you're taking part in events, for folks that are trying to get back to work in a more normal way. I think that's the frustrating challenge, especially for parents of young children who can't get vaccinated yet, right? And we were at a wonderful political event for Assistant Majority Leader, State Representative Delia Ramirez last night. It was outside at the National Museum of Puerto Rican Art in Humboldt Park. It was socially distanced still. So I think there are ways to come together and celebrate the victories and come together to make plans for the future, to see how we're going to register more voters in our community and keep those community political movements alive. I think we've missed that a lot, and it's important to get those started again, especially as we're looking to 2022, right? So as an organizer, there are ways to get around it, and I was so happy to see the folks like Willa and Ryan and her team at United with Delia put together such a conscious event where families could feel safe and participate and things like that. But as you know, the Rainbow Push coalition convention is coming up, and that's still virtual, so you can keep folks safe. So we're still operating in a different world, and we're anxious to get back. But as we need to come together to organize around these voter suppression laws that we're seeing put in place, we're going to have to get more creative. So as organizers, this Delta variant, this whole, I would say, I guess it would be a third wave, really needs to be at the front of our minds as we're looking to organize and knock on doors and continue to have movements that make change, like we saw in Georgia. So I hope we can continue to be creative and that our movements continue to lead. And I think that's one of the reasons why it is important that our president is looking to be more proactive to encourage the best behavior for the most amount of people at the federal level. And I think we're going to see a lot of other folks have to step up and take some hard leadership decisions with regards to masks and vaccination.
We're going to get some closing thoughts from everybody here, a couple of minutes apiece. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, what's our takeaway? Attorney Hoffler? Well, then let me go to you, Dwight McKee. Our takeaway. What should we know? What are we looking at right now?
Well, I think that is still up for review. Some will depend on the effectiveness of these shots. If there's a wave of new situations, I think it will question the viability of and effectiveness of these vaccinations, and they will create more of a backdraft. I'm really kind of concerned about the religious component to all this. People who were willing to go to war because they didn't want to pay taxes on tea. If you put a situation on the table where they have to choose between their religious conviction and taking a shot and their commitment to civil law, then they would tend, I think, to create the same kind of uprising to defend their right not to have the state impose a vaccination or a shot on them that they believe runs counter to the gospel. And when you look at Revelations and they talk about the mark of the beast, ironically, so much of the QAnon interpretation of these situations match the book of Revelation. And that's one reason they have such viability and such credibility. People think they're crazy, but when you look at, the evidence and you watch how the state reacts, it only supports the notions of these guys with these conspiracy theories. So it's yet to be seen where it's going to go, Santita.
Attorney Mark Fancher, what's our takeaway?
Well, I think that we should step back and reflect on the fact that none of this has to be. Things don't have to be the way that they are. We have gotten away from the basic direction that Jesus provided to us. Love ye one another. If we were focused on that, rather than being so thoroughly grounded in a culture in the U.S. which was largely shaped by capitalist interests of individualism. I am an individual, a rugged individual at that, and that I have individual rights, and that everything that I do is for me, and that I'm driven by personal ambition and greed. That kind of thinking creates certain expectations, a certain mindset within the population, which takes them a long way from thinking about what's best for us. And it creates all kinds of complications and difficulties, sometimes even in ways that bite them in places that they did not expect to be bitten. The right wing for the last number of months, if not years, has been counting on having a turnout from their base that's going to help them recapture political power, and they've driven this narrative about, not being vaccinated, suspicion about what the left is doing and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But you notice that in recent days, if not weeks, they've all of a sudden done a sharp turn and said, now you need to get vaccinated. It's because they finally realized that if they don't encourage their base to get vaccinated, they won't have a base anymore because everybody will have died.
Mm.
And so, we have to keep in mind that as long as we're thinking about, political opportunism, as long as we're locked into an individual, kind of a perspective that drives what we do and how we think and how we act, as long as we're individuals, we are doomed to collapse. When we begin to think about what's best for everybody, when we take stock of what's necessary for the community to survive and to thrive, then we rise. And until we get back to that, we don't have much hope.
Amen to that, everybody. We are in this together. We're in this together. And so, in that spirit, I hope that you will join us at the Rainbow Push International Conference next week. CK, I've got less than a minute. What's going on next week? I know you're going to be moderating the women's panel, and, you'll be overseeing the women's panel, and Stacey Abrams will be moderating it. Who else is going to be at our convention next week? Oh, is CK there? Well, you know what? We're going to have some of everybody there. I want you to go to rainbowpush.org, rainbowpush.org, and get involved. Register, be a part of the conference. It's going to be virtual. We're trying to keep everything as safe as possible, as safe as possible. So go to rainbowpush.org, get involved in the conference. We want to see you. We want to feel you. We want you to be a part of it. And find out if you're registered to vote, because we're looking at that right now, because we're in the midst of the 2022 election. My dear sister beloved, Nina Turner, is running for office just outside of Cleveland right now. She's just days away from perhaps going to Congress. We hope and pray. But everybody, I hope that you will be safe. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe. And let's stop fighting each other. Let's start working to each other. My brother Jonathan says something that is so profound. He says, I don't want to fix the blame. I want to fix the problem. We've got a problem. It's called COVID-19. We have a problem. It's called, everyone doesn't have access to equal high quality health care or education or housing or food. That's the problem. And that's what needs mending. What needs ending is poverty. What needs ending is lack of access to education, whether it's academic or vocational, whatever it is. That's what needs ending. We need mending. The people don't need ending. Let's get along, everybody.
15.
Boy, Rodney, boy, oh boy, Rodney King, you said it. Can we all get along? Yeah, we can. Indeed, that's the plan. So let's do that, everybody. I love you. Can't wait to be with you on Keep Hope Alive on Sunday. And of course, at our Rainbow Push convention, which is about to begin. I love you, everybody. God bless you. Have a great weekend. My beloved people, I'll let you go. Thank you so much for being with us today. We wouldn't be able to do it without you, Mark and Dwight and Aaron. Thank you. Sending you much love.
Mark, owe you a call.
God bless you, everybody. I think he's gone. All right, he's there? Okay.
Yeah, Mark, owe you a call.
Oh, okay. Yeah, anytime.
All right.
God bless. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Dwight. Yes.
Did you heard about Glenn Ford, right?
What happened?
Oh, I'm sorry. He passed away.
What? When did that happen?
Just a day or two ago. I feel like I've been kicked in the gut.
Oh my gosh. Glenn?
Yeah.
Look, I just lost like my best friend. I just buried her on Monday. Then April Branch, who was my father's executive assistant, her mother was my father's executive assistant. She welcomed us back home last Wednesday. Didn't see her for a couple of days. They thought she had taken a day off. She died. We're going to bury her tomorrow. Glenn Ford? Oh, boy.
Yeah. But
wow.
Anyway, wow. I don't have details, but...
Please get them to me, because I certainly would like to talk about him on Monday. Just even if it's just a quick little something, just to for people who don't know who he is, black commentator. This is one of the most brilliant political minds um,
Yeah.
uh, that you ever wanted to know. Someone who was so insightful, so insightful. Bless his heart. I didn't know Glenn passed. I didn't
Yeah.
know that. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
It's out of the clear blue. So I was like, whoa.
Had he been ill? No.
I think so.
Okay.
I don't know the nature of it, but I know that he was slow in responding to things I was sending, and the publication itself was kind of delayed a little bit, and he was not writing. So
Wow.
I think whatever it was, probably had been with him. But
Bless his heart. I had no idea. I had no idea. I did not know that.
yeah.
Oh, boy, July 2021. Boy, what a year. What a month. I mean, I've not had a break every week. It's just people have gotten out of here. It's like they're parachuting out of here. Boom, boom, boom. Well, I guess we have to do what we have to do while we're here, right?
Oh yeah. No. Nobody's promised tomorrow. So.
Well, what did the song say? We ain't got long to stay here.
That's right.
Okay, my Lord calls me by the thunder. Come on now. We ain't got long to stay here. We do not have long to stay here. So let's make it count, everybody. Let's make it count. Do what you got to do. Plus, as Reverend Otis Moss Jr., Reverend Dr. Otis Moss Jr. said, hey, remember, going to heaven, hope that's where we're going, is a promotion. That's an upgrade.
That's right.
Let's do everything that we can while we're here. Because eternity is a mighty long time, everybody, and that's where we're supposed to be returning to. I know grammatically that was incorrect, but you know what I'm saying. Oh, God bless you, Mark. Thank you so much for that. I'm just heartbroken. Wow.
Sorry to be the bearer of bad news.
Oh, well, yeah, I know, but I'm glad you said it. I've just lost a lot of people this month. Oh my gosh. Whew. Oh boy. Oh boy. Well, thank you so much for that. Well, God bless you. God bless you.
Bless you.
And I'll
All
have
right.
you on here next week. Thank you. Thank you. God bless you. God bless you, everybody. A King. That's right. You know who Glenn Ford is. Veteran broadcaster. You said print and digital journalist. Hosted the first nationally syndicated Black news interview program on TV. Wow. What a genius. And so dedicated to really the least of these. Safe travels, my friend. God bless you, everybody. I'll see you on Sunday on Keep Up Alive with Reverend Jesse Jackson. And God willing, Monday, right back here on the Santita Jackson Show. Thank you. God bless.